Hello, assalamu alaikum, everyone. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. It's Leah. Hello, it's been a minute. I'm going to be talking today about what we should do when we are feeling sad and depressed. I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm only using my phone. So I'm going to have to switch back between looking at my notes on Messenger and not watching the video and making this video. It shouldn't cause any problems, but if you see my eyes looking all over the place, it's because of that. So let me read the original question. One of the excuse me, as it was described in the context of this question, one of the tricks of shaitan is to make people lose hope and thus lose faith, I suppose. And so what can we do to deal with that? Well, that really depends on a lot of different factors. So I think that we can all agree that this last year, the great majority of the year 2020 and part of 2021 caused a lot of upheaval, a lot of changes for a lot of people. Some of us have had loved ones die. Others, haven't been able to see, our beloved grandparents or parents or siblings or whomever because of lockdown. And as a species, we're social creatures. We crave human connection. Even those of us like me who are introverts, and I can get on very well by myself most of the time, but there's a certain point where isolation is just too much. And I've got my husband and 3 kids, but when it's just the same people every day without stop, it can get difficult. And that's just one thing. That's like isolation is just one thing. People have been facing changes in terms of employment, in terms of security. I see someone named Lockdown just joined, which is which is appropriate. Changes in health. There are, so many changes which are always happening, but have been exacerbated in the last year. Just because of the extremely unusual and absolutely wild global situation. Something like this hasn't happened in 100 years, not on this scale, So it's there are many, sorry, this keeps on poofing out. There are lots of reasons that people could feel sad and desperate and hopeless. The pandemic is just one of them, but that's something that stands out in particular in the last year. So let me take a look at my watch to see the time. For the next 26 minutes, we will talk about the different things that might make believers and non-believers, we're all people, that might make people lose hope, or might make people feel sad, or might make people depressed, and what we can do about those different things. I'm going to go ahead and start off with a disclaimer here that I am not a medical professional. My husband is, and we joke that sometimes that makes me as good as a doctor, but it's not true. It's not true at all. As an aside, he's taking this extra anatomy class right now, and it's just it blows your mind how detailed the human body is, and how much it's incredible. If anyone ever wants to strengthen their belief in the creator, study human anatomy and see how intricate it is. But that's an aside. Back to the topic. Okay. So without vastly oversimplifying, there are different, levels of feeling sad. There's just feeling sad. Like sometimes you wake up on the wrong side of the bed. Sometimes, there's just a small thing happening that you're kind of feeling sad about. For this kind of sadness, a lot of believers find it helpful to try and connect with God. May it be that, just in your regular daily prayers, or if you or dhikr or da, anything that might help you connect with the Creator and just feel a little bit more grounded. That can be helpful in those situations. I know that sometimes when I'm feeling down about something that's happening in my life, just sort of daw as though I'm just talking, as though I'm having a conversation with God, is helpful for me. In the culture I grew up in, that sort of thing, it's not abnormal to talk to a God figure as though you're having a conversation. And that's something that's comforting to me. It's a one-sided conversation, obviously, because, he is not physically answering, because that doesn't happen anymore. But it just sort of processing your thoughts, processing your feelings out loud, and also trying to think, what would righteous and holy people do in this situation? Sometimes, it can be helpful to remember that the Prophet ﷺ, for example, when his beloved wife Khadija died, he was so very, very sad and devastated. And sometimes I think that Muslims put pressure on ourselves and each other to just be like, oh, don't forget, Allah is with you, everything's going to be okay. But you're allowed to feel sad. You're allowed to have those feelings, and it's healthy. And if you're feeling sad because of a loss or because of something going on in your life, it's okay. If connecting with the Creator helps you to process that, then do it. If it helps to just stay in bed for a morning, and if you have the luxury to be able to do that, then do that. Try and make yourself feel better and take care of yourself. Be, if that's, your one-sided conversations with God, or a more formal act of worship, whatever it may be. And just, bearing in mind that you are allowed to have difficult feelings. It's okay. You're not a bad Muslim for feeling sad. You're not a bad Muslim for feeling hopeless. It's okay to feel like life is terrible and nothing ever good is ever going to happen. That's not a sin to think that. It's what I think, in my opinion, what would be sinful is dragging other people down with you, spreading a negative, not spread, it's okay if other people around you know you're feeling badly, but if you're latching onto them and putting them down and dragging them down, as though you need company in the pits of despair, that's not okay. It's okay to feel what you're feeling, and it's okay to feel desperate and hopeless. That is okay, but it's not okay to try and make people around you suffer as well. So that's more just for your day-to-day sadness. Wake up on the wrong side of the bed. I'm feeling sad because, gosh, I don't even know. Not because I don't have anything to be sad about, just because something's not springing. I haven't had enough coffee yet, I guess. That makes me sad. But just day-to-day things like that. Now, if we're talking about, I'm gonna go to the complete other end, and we'll cover stuff in the middle afterwards. But if we're talking about anxiety and depression as something that is gripping you and controlling your life, prayer doesn't fix that. Prayer doesn't fix that. It can help you feel more connected to your faith. It can help you feel better in a moment, and that's fine, and that's great. And I'm not saying that if you're feeling anxious or depressed, you shouldn't pray. That's not what I'm saying at all. But too often, all the time, anytime the issues of anxiety and depression come up, you hear this rhetoric from Muslims like, oh, just pray, Allah will take care of you, just pray and you'll be better. Well, no, that's not always the case. Depression and anxiety are medical conditions, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you need medication for it, although it could, and that's fine. But you can't just pray and fix a medical condition any more than you can pray over a broken leg and make it better. You would never say to a person, to stick with the example, who has a broken leg, oh, just, it's fine, just pray about it and you'll be fine. yes, prayer is an important part of the life of a Muslim. That's obvious, but it's not the solution. One famous hadith that, I'm sure we've all heard of before, and I'm just going to paraphrase. I'm not going to try and tell it exactly the way it was transmitted, but you all know the story of the man who had his camel at the mosque, and the Prophet ﷺ said, "Are you going to tie your camel? Are you going to make sure that your camel doesn't run away?" And the man said, "No, I have faith in Allah." And after some exchange, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Tie your camel and then have faith in Allah." And I think this is it's such a powerful hadith, and it's so important to think about what that means. The Prophet ﷺ, he was a pragmatist, but he knows that Allah created camels. They are animals. They'll act on instinct and they will wander away. And Allah also inspired some person, probably millennia ago, to invent rope to tie things in place. I mean, if all we need to do is just walk around and have faith in Allah, then why go to work? Why not just have faith that money will appear? Why bother even cooking yourself food? Just have faith that Allah will fill your stomach. That's not a real way to live your life. Tie your camel. And what I'm talking about in this context is if we're thinking about being depressed or anxious, tie your camel. That means going to therapy, or going to, if it's something more serious, seeing a medical doctor, seeing if perhaps you need prescription medication. Allah inspired someone, probably a team of people, to invent therapeutic drugs so that we could treat issues like depression and anxiety. Alhamdulillah, this is new. This is something that we are blessed with in the 21st century that people didn't have a long time ago. And to just dismiss that kind of thing and say you should just have faith in Allah, like, how does that make sense? That the faith that you have is respecting the amazing science that has led to the ability to treat things like depression, which people suffered. Depression isn't new. It's not like people didn't have it before. It's just that we didn't have a medical diagnosis for it. And, people would be described as melancholic, but they didn't know what to do about it. They'd just throw some herbs at you and hope for the best. But now we have drugs that can help people to regain themselves and feel better. And what is really having faith in Allah is to appreciate the full bounty of blessings that He has given us in order to handle these problems. So I'm not going to say, don't bother praying. That's not what I'm saying at all. But don't just pray and expect your problems to be solved. That has never been a part of Islam, ever. Never has the answer been to just pray and everything will get solved. So when we're, again, talking about, severe forms of depression, and not even necessarily severe, but just clinical depression or anxiety as can be diagnosed by a medical professional. People should not be dismissive of that kind of thing. Okay. I'm just checking to make sure that I'm not losing track of time, because I will. And, excuse me, I don't mind telling you that after my daughter was born, she is almost 7 now. Starting from the time she was about 4 or 5 months old, I struggled with depression, and it took years, many, many years for it to go away. And it's not, I I kept praying that whole time. I never stopped praying, but it didn't make it feel better. It didn't make it go away. There's a sort of heaviness that just sticks with you. I didn't, and I never ended up needing medication for it, but that's just me. Some people do, and that's valid. And to this day, right now, alhamdulillah, I don't struggle with depression anymore, but I do struggle with anxiety. Just get my husband on here and ask him. He's very much aware of how it can grip my life. There's a change going on at my workplace right now. And even though it's annoying, I'll say that it's annoying, but we can work with it. But even though it's not that big a deal, it still is gripping me and making me panic. And I feel scared. And I spent a lot of time crying and angrily texting a coworker, not angrily texting a coworker, like being angry at her, but we were angry texting together. And even though I know in my head it's going to be okay, I just can't extricate myself from the grips of the anxiety, no matter what I do. It's not because I have no faith. It's not because I don't believe in God. It's not because I don't have patience. It's just something within me that I can't control. I have techniques that I use to cope with this. Distraction works for me. It doesn't work for everyone, but distraction works for me. Trying to keep my mind occupied with other things. My husband is a big help. If you have a partner who's supportive, that's incredibly important. Or if you don't have a partner, a sibling or a parent or someone who's going to be supportive of you and not just tell you you should have faith. Having someone to have your back is very important. I also have the unhealthy tendency to make myself feel better with food, which I don't recommend. I'm telling you this to tell you, don't do that. It's not good for you. And I also drink a lot of coffee, which probably doesn't help my anxiety, but I'm not about to stop that. So, my children are downstairs, so I apologize if I have to pause. Excuse me. Don't worry, it's not COVID. So to sum up what I've touched on so far, we've got your day-to-day sadness, things that connecting with the Creator could help. If not solve, it can help you feel better. It can alleviate your feelings of sadness. Then we've got, the other end where no matter how much you connect with the Creator, it's not going to cure you. It's not going to make it better. This is the tire camel. I mean, always tire camel in every situation, but especially in situations where you're struggling with a medical issue. And there's everything in between. And really what I want to emphasize is taking action. Life is difficult. And we have to try and find ways to get through it and kind of cope with it, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go back what I talked about in the beginning, what I mentioned about all the life changes that I'm sure many, if not all of us, have experienced due to the events of the last year, the pandemic. If anyone else has, I know there's a small handful of people watching. If there's anyone else who has a topic they want to talk about, I can see the comments as they go by. So please feel free to make a comment. So experiencing a global pandemic is something that probably, thankfully, is a once-in-a-lifetime event. I mean, there's a flu pandemic basically every year except last year. But I'm talking about something with a novel virus on this scale, or a novel disease or whatever on this scale. So once in a lifetime, inshallah. But even so, it's brought about a lot of permanent changes. It only takes one lifetime for a lot of permanent changes to happen. And I'm sure that kind of thing is causing a lot of difficulty and struggle for a lot of people, including myself. A lot of people are there. You're either working from home, which is most likely, not definitely, but most likely new to you, or you are forced to go and work in public during a pandemic. So that's difficult. And then again, like I mentioned before, there's isolation. I think more and more, or I guess less and less lockdown now as things are, as the vaccine is becoming more available. But there is still a component of isolation, not to mention people have lost jobs, and, a job is a job, but if it's your livelihood and it's the way that you provide for your family or you support your family, that's a huge deal. And it can be really easy and really understandable to be brought down into despair because of those things that are happening. And that's, excuse me, as I already mentioned before, that is okay. That's okay. It's okay to feel upset and even desperate in times like this when there's a huge upheaval going on. Even if you are starting to get back on your feet, doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is. For some people, honestly, it could just be the beginning of this thing. It's a long, it could be a long journey. So I would say it's probably the norm for people to be struggling with feelings of depression, of feelings of anxiety, whether they're just, waking up feeling anxious or or having a diagnosable anxiety, and it's hard to distinguish between the two. And it's not my place or anyone else's to do so. It's between a person and their medical professional, doctor or whomever. Anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent. My point is, lots of changes going on in the world, and it's normal and understandable to be feeling, oh shoot, hang on, sorry, okay, I'm back. Let me think, what was I gonna say? It's normal for, I'm so sorry, it's normal for people to be struggling and having a hard time. As I said, I was on a roll and I lost my train of thought, and I wouldn't have interrupted, but it was really important, so I apologize. Okay. So I don't want to, alhamdulillah, I'm in a really fortunate position, and so I don't want to be sitting here preaching like, oh, you lost your job, well, go out and look for a new one, because it's not necessarily that simple. There are a lot of considerations people need to be having. So when I say the important thing is to take action, that's not what I mean. I don't mean to be preaching at you and saying like, oh, well, okay, you need a job, go get one. Or you're feeling sad, go blow your nose in a hanky. Oh, you miss your mom, call her. It's not always that simple. It's not so cut and dry. These are complex things, and I'm also in a really privileged position to have a support system. So it's hard for me to sit here and say, make sure you have a support system. If you are fortunate enough, and I think that a lot of Muslim societies are family oriented, so inshallah, a lot of you do have support systems. But please remember that it's so important to take care of yourself. And remember the example of the Prophet ﷺ. Like I mentioned before, he was in his feelings, and that's okay. You're allowed to be in your feelings, but he didn't just give up. And again, I keep on saying this. I don't mean to be preaching at people who have like a clinical depression. I'm not addressing you in this. Find small things that you can do. Connect with your creator, even if you have like a really difficult anxiety or really bad depression. I'm not saying connecting with your creator is going to solve it, but if you can, if that's an anchor for you, for some people, that your 5 daily prayers are sort of an anchor. It's something to plan your day around. That might help you. Giving yourself a project, something to focus on, that might help you, even if it's something silly. I have a cross stitch project that I've been working on, and when I'm feeling really stressed out, taking a few minutes to work on that, even though it's just a decoration, it's not anything I'm not going to sell it, but it's relaxing. It brings me joy. It brings me a sense of calm. They're tiny little stitches, and that sort of thing calms me because I'm weird like that. If it's distraction, watch a TV show, or if connecting with your religion is something that's helping you, watch a lecture, listen to a podcast. If anyone needs podcast recommendations, I've got them for you. I'm a podcast aficionado. Whether it's distraction, whether it's connection with your creator, whether it's seeking out a medical professional, no matter what it is, the important thing is to try your very best, not to just sit and do nothing. One more time, I'm going to say, I know that's not always possible if you're really in the depths of depression. And for that, I want to say, if there's someone in your life who you are worried might be experiencing depression, please be the one to reach out to them. Because when you have depression, it's not always possible for you to reach out to other people because of the overwhelming feelings of worthlessness that go through you. Find small things to focus on. Find your moments of connection with God. Read, study, distract yourself. And continue to make sure you are handling the pandemic responsibly. Get vaccinated if you have that option available to you. No, we got a little bit disjointed there towards the end, but I hope that people found this helpful somewhat. I am going to go ahead and say goodbye. I believe on Thursday I will be back for a completely different topic, talking about marriage, everyone's favorite. So if you need a distraction from the things in your life that are making you feel down, even if you're already married like I am, tune in on Thursday at the same time, and we will talk about what you can do to do your best to pick the partner that's right for you. So with that, I'm going to say Salam Alaikum and go ahead and log off.